Hi there everyone, welcome back to my channel. Lisa the PFJ here. Hope you're having a lovely day today. It's been a little bit of a gap since the last video, but here I am back with another one. So welcome back and hope you're enjoying what you've seen so far. I'm going to do a couple of videos today, I think, or at least try and do one or two in the next couple of days. But the one I want to focus on today, and for several reasons, there's many threads I want to pull at here with this one, is the recent not just the controversy surrounding Miller Lite beer, but it's also seems to be something of an offshoot of the controversy that surrounded the Bud Light controversy from a couple of months ago, which has had a very interesting domino effect going there. I won't go too much detail of that one because, well, we could be here all day, but this one caught my attention for the same reasons as the Bud Light one would have, but also for a couple of things that I noticed that some may have already, so forgive me if it seems like I'm copying anyone, but there's a couple of things that stood out to me and I wanted to go into those. Now, it all started, like I said, the Bud Light thing, when they hired a certain Dylan Mulvaney to be their face for their brand. A lot of people pushed back, they boycotted the brand, they made their feelings very vocal online, both either in the form of written word or video form, where people were actually seen walking into certain retail outlets and concession stands and sporting arenas where the queues for other brands were out of the door, while the queue for the Bud Light stand was empty. There wasn't one, is the best way to put it. But what also was an offshoot of this, and I don't know how this came about, the only reason that I think a lot of people, including myself, became aware of the Miller Lite's current controversy was through a Twitter account called Myth-Informed Milwaukee. Now, they are a very active group, from what I understand, to make it their mission to find and expose and I don't know if it's exactly in the same manner as the likes of James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, but in a similar style, they find out things from institutions, brands, corporate companies, and expose some of the infestation of wokery, if you will, that has been going on within those organisations. Now, they were the one who showed this ad campaign that Miller Lite had put out. I believe they put it out around about the same time as the Bud Light one, but because of the massive amount of eyes that were on the Bud Light controversy, this one just seemed to have gone under the radar, at least temporarily. But what then occurred is a bunch of people reacted in exactly the same way as they would have with the Bud Light one, and in some cases even worse, because, as I'll explain, I think that this one is a lot more damaging than the Bud Light one. That surrounded one person. It was very badly thought out. It was very out of touch with the kind of people that Bud Light think that are buying their beer. And, you know, it I don't think it's blown over because they are feeling the effects now. I do believe that their marketing VP, who was the head of this decision, and I believe she called the people who up until this point had bought her beer fratty and out of touch, which, I mean, Jesus, calling the kettle black. She's since been moved on. I don't want to say she's been fired, but she certainly isn't working within that capacity at Anheuser-Busch, who are the parent company who own Bud Light and other brands. But also, they've taken quite a hit in their profits, and specifically, one thing I did see was that their stock was degraded by HSBC Banking Group. So, bad news across the board for Bud. But this one, like I said, has started to come to people's attention thanks to the likes of Myth-Informed. But to me, it's a lot worse because of the wording of how it goes. I can read it out, but I can also show you, because I'm not going to play the video because I'm sure there'll be some sort of copyright infringement that will occur. But just to go through what is said in the ad, I'm going to read it out from here. It says, in an ad celebrating Women's History Month, Miller Lite used comedian Ilana Glazer to condemn the bikini-laden woman beer ads of the past. This is from Fox News, by the way, so credit to them. And Ilana Glazer said, this is another thing that has created something of a Streisand effect for probably myself and others, is that I'd never heard of this woman until now. But the whole attitude of her in this video is just of like a bitter, older, maybe late 20s, early 30s woman who doesn't have the looks and figure of these girls who used to advertise Miller Lite, and is showing it in 4K for all of us to see within this ad. But that's just a personal observation. Centuries later, how did this industry pay homage to the founding mothers of beer? Oh, that's the other thing, is they basically credit, among others, women with being some of the first people to brew beer, among others saying that other people who were some of the first were men. So she's not making the point that she thinks she's making. They put us in bikinis, she said, as she walked by past beer advertisements featuring bikini-clad women and throwing one in the trash. Wow, look at this wild. It's time beer made up to women, so today Miller Lite is on a mission to clean up not just their S, but the whole beer industry's S, she added. Miller Lite has been scouring the internet for all this S and buying it back. So what they're saying is snitch on us, please. We've been very, very bad and we want you to snitch on us. It's like, oh my God. Like, it's as if these guys are begging for people not to buy their stuff. At this point, it's pretty pathetic. The whole attitude towards it, and it then proceeds for them going to some of the farmers who who are responsible for growing the hops, and they're both women. There's three by my count. There's two farmer type women who talk about the process of growing the hops and saying that this stuff that they're buying back is somehow going to fertilise those hops. I don't see how that's possible from a natural biological standpoint, but anyway, that's not something I'm that much of an expert in, so I'll leave that there. And then goes on to a woman brewer who said that the proceeds that they're going to make from this or the hops that they grow from this are going to go to women who are in the brewing industry. So fine. I mean, if this is going to, it's on the face of it is marketing itself as something that is pushing women up who are achieving something by means of being farmers or brewing beer, who are not alone but who are quite low numbers within their industry, and trying to encourage maybe others to get into it and do the same. But as is with a lot of this sort of stuff, in the modern format of I don't want to say probably feminism, at this point it's probably fourth wave feminism, they seem to be pushing up these women at the expense of others. And that's demonstrable from the way that they speak about the women who used to appear in their commercials. So it's like it's basically saying, thanks for all the money that you made us, now bugger off, you're not welcome anymore. We're like pulling the door up behind any other pretty girl who has a nice body who might want to, go out in these things, because that's the other point. I don't think any of these women did this sort of thing against their own will. That no one held a gun to their head and made them get in a bikini and promote beer. They were doing it because they wanted to, and they wanted to make a bit of money, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of them, even if you were conning them now, would probably say that they've got no embarrassment about it. But what it also smacks of, and in the same vein, and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but there's this notion that women being sexualised is wrong, but at the same time, in other capacities, it's right. So it's no longer okay for women to wear bikinis or small, like scanty clothing to promote stuff, but it's okay for them to sign up for an OnlyFans and show parts of their body to the entire bloody world, or to the people who subscribe to them and pay for it. So on the same thing, women scantily clad promoting beer bad, but sex work is real work. It's talking outside both sides of your mouth. It's bipolar, and it's really hard to keep up with, but I think that's the whole point. So that was one of the threads that interested me, and it very much reminded me as well of, if anybody who remembers or follows Formula One or a lot of other motorsports, that it was the eradication of the grid girl, where women who would usually look very attractive and wear very scanty clothing or very tight-fitting clothing would welcome people into the arena. They would stand on the grid, and while the drivers made their way to and from the cars or to and from the celebration area before they made it to the podium celebrating their wins, were gotten rid of across the board, because a few people said that they were being belittled and were being sexualised and encouraging the male gaze. And it didn't seem to be uniform thing either. It wasn't like these women were consulted and said, like, you know, do you want to do this, yes or no. They were just told uniformly, you're out, this is it, you're not doing it anymore. And there's a very famous example of one, if you follow her on Twitter, called Leilani Dowding. She's a British ex-grid girl and glamour model who was a victim of this, and she's very open about her views nowadays, especially on certain things like that, but on other political and cultural topics as well. So give her a follow if you would, because she's very good. Yeah, so that was one thread that got me. The second one, in fact, the second one I'll go into is, it was a bit of a personal observation, and I'm going to zoom in on this, so I apologise. It's probably going to be quite grainy and you have to look at this broad's face, so sorry. But the background images here, you'll see obviously they're all from the old campaigns, but what got my interest was what they've done here, and they've blurred their faces out. Now, I mentioned this on my videos before. I reside in the Middle East and have done for a few years now, and up until fairly recently, any marketing or advertising for brands, specifically if you went into sort of the shopping malls in the local area, if it was like a clothing store or a makeup cosmetics store, if the pictures for their current campaigns had women's faces on them, they'd be blurred out. And men's faces as well, it should be said. If there was like particularly attractive men or women within the advertising campaigns, the pictures would go up, but they would blur out the faces and sometimes the bodies of these people. Now, whether or not that's what they had in mind, I'm sure they didn't, and it may just be to protect the identities of these women. They may have been contacted and asked if they wanted their faces to be shown, and they said no, or they just made an across-the-board decision to blur their faces out so that, you know, they wouldn't get any blowback legally. But unfortunately, my brain, and this is just me, but some others might have, if they're in the same position as me, made this kind of observation, is that you're now making it look like, or I'm not saying you're in line with the way these guys think, but you're certainly using similar tactics to what they used to use, because they don't actually use it that much in this part of the world anymore. They've kind of moved, they're trying at least to move away from that kind of thing. But you still certainly wouldn't see anyone wearing this few clothing in the windows of the shops here. But I mean, it should be mentioned that that is something that I've observed, and for that to be in the same, being said in the same conversation about a Western beer brand is quite the thing to pull together, and two things you wouldn't think that you would be mentioning in the same sentence, other than that these guys surely aren't going to use the same tactics and same way of doing things as this group of people. But yeah, here we are. But I wanted to end it on a bit more of a light-hearted note, because remember how I said that they were on an effort, or she said herself in the ad, Alana Glazer, that they're scouring the internet and scouring the history of the company to find any of the old marketing and old advertising campaigns with these offensively dressed women and buying them back. Well, I noticed a certain ex-person who used to advertise Miller Lite. Isn't this interesting? Young Ms. Markle, also now known as the Duchess of Sussex, married to Prince Harry, and probably the wokest of woke people that has ever walked the planet. Now, I know people know that what she's done in the past, and this, by the way, want to make it very clear, I'm not shaming this woman in any way, shape or form. She did a job, she got paid for it, good for her. But the fact is, if we're playing by their rules, this lady now needs to send back everything that she's ever done, including any money she made from this, by the way, and prostrate herself at the altar of the new way of doing things by way of brands like Miller Lite, and beg for their forgiveness, and beg for the forgiveness of everyone who is against this. Because, I mean, we could go around in circles, no one really thinks this way about it, and let's face it, she isn't wearing, she's not quite bikini clad, but she's certainly showing off a bit of the old cleavage. So, there you go. What say you, Miss Markle, I wonder? I don't know if she's spoken out, and I do seem to have seen a couple of articles that have noticed that she was part of it. And then she's not the only one, to be fair to her. There's other quite prominent names, including Pamela Anderson, from a very different end of the spectrum, especially these days, but they still started from a similar place. So, I mean, people should literally be putting their money where their mouth is and doing what the good lady on the Miller ad has asked them to do. So let's see. To tie it all up, I have no problem either way, whatever it is these ladies do. Like, I have no problem with Meghan Markle doing what she did to make her money. I have no real problem on the face of it with this stuff. But the biggest problem I do have is that they're playing to a market that doesn't exist. Your average beer drinker is not going to sit and watch this ad and go, oh, I'm going to go out and buy some more, and what's more, I'm going to do what this lady says and find all the old ads I can find and then send them on to you. And by the way, there is a website with a whole bunch of sort of boxes to fill in where you can send on anything that you find. It's basically like a snitching website. It's bizarre. And to think that, you know, this comes right at the same time when they would have seen the reaction of Bud Light and what happened with them, and think that this was still a good strategy to go by, although they did come out at similar times, so maybe they weren't even aware that Bud Light were doing what they were doing. But I mean, I'm sure there's people within these companies who operate within similar circles, so I imagine someone must have known. So the fact that it just stands to reason, the fact that they thought that this was a good idea is mind-blowing. But let's just see what happens with these guys and see if it has a similar knock-on effect than it had with Bud Light. I'll be very interested to see it, and I'm sure you will be too. I'm going to wrap up there. Thanks very much, guys, for watching. If you liked what you saw, please consider giving the video a thumbs up. Share it with your friends if you think it's worthwhile. Comment on the video if you've got anything to add to the conversation, and subscribe to my channel if you wouldn't mind, because I really would appreciate it. And with that, I'll see you on the next video. Take care, and bye-bye.